There was a nobleman who lived with his second wife, whom he married after the death of his first wife. This wife, unlike the first, was arrogant, cruel, and ill-mannered. Not only that, but he also had two daughters who were similar to her in character and morals, and who inherited from her the traits of meanness and envy. This man had a daughter named Cinderella, who was a delicate, beautiful, kind-hearted, and moral girl. She had inherited these qualities from her deceased mother. Not long after the man got married, his wife began to mistreat Cinderella. She left her with the most difficult chores in the house, such as washing the dishes and pots, polishing the furniture, and making her sweep the floor and make the bed every morning. The matter did not stop there, but went beyond that to making her sleep in a hut on a bed made of dirty straw. What made Cinderella's suffering worse was that her stepmother's two daughters enjoyed a luxurious life. They slept on luxurious beds in elegant rooms, wore the most beautiful clothes, and ate the most delicious food. In return, Cinderella was given only shabby and worn-out clothes that had been worn out by the two girls. One day, an invitation arrived at the house from the king's palace, saying that the prince, the king's son, had prepared a big party and invited all the girls in the town to dress up and attend this party. The invitation that arrived at the house did not exclude anyone, meaning that Cinderella would have gone to that party had her stepmother not refused. 2 days later, the long-awaited date came. The stepmother went with her two daughters to the royal hall that the prince had prepared for the party, and left Cinderella in the house with tears streaming from her eyes. Cinderella had not been crying in front of the house for a long time when she heard a voice calling her. At first, Cinderella thought she was imagining things, but as soon as she looked at the source of the voice behind her, she saw the spectre of a dignified and beautiful woman. This spectre was Cinderella's mother, so she asked her, "Why are you crying, Cinderella?" Cinderella answered, "I have endured the injustice of my stepmother all this time, and I have also endured the cruelty of her two daughters, and I have been cleaning the house alone every day, and doing all kinds of hard work. I wish I could go with them today to the prince's party." The mother said, "I came to you today because I know how much you want to attend the prince's party, so you have to help me bring some things so that I can take you to the party." Cinderella answered happily, "Really? And where will I get a dress to wear? And shoes to wear? And a carriage to take me to the party?" The mother said, "Don't worry about all this. I will manage it." She pointed in the air with a golden wand and immediately brought a luxurious carriage that Cinderella had never seen the likes of, even to the king, pulled by purebred, clean, strong horses that were unparalleled, and surrounded by a group of servants wearing elegant uniforms like those worn by the coachman. Then she pointed again with her golden wand at Cinderella, and her tattered clothes were transformed into the most beautiful dress that Cinderella had ever seen in her life, and a necklace of jewels wrapped around her neck that was one of the most valuable necklaces that a girl in the town could own, and on her feet were glass shoes that shone brighter than diamonds, like no other. Then she said to her, "Come on, go to the party and enjoy your night, Cinderella, for you deserve it. But there is one thing that you must know well and adhere to, which is that you must leave the party and return home before midnight, for when the clock strikes 12, everything will return to the way it was before." Cinderella set off with her entourage towards the king's palace, and her arrival at the prince's party caused a great stir. The guards at the palace door welcomed this princess, whom no one had ever seen or heard of before, and some of them went to tell the prince that a princess had arrived at the party, and he must receive her. And that is what actually happened. When the prince saw Cinderella, he was captivated by her beauty, and he cared about her alone, without the rest of the attendees. He remained sitting next to her the entire time, and had dinner with her, and did not stop talking to her. The prince was not the only one who was taken by Cinderella's beauty and elegance, as the attendees joined him in wondering about this princess who had suddenly appeared and where she had come from. Cinderella's stepmother and her two stepdaughters were no exception, as they admired her and talked about her throughout the party, and on the way back, and even after they arrived home, as they began to tell Cinderella about the princess who had stolen the prince's mind. Cinderella did not forget her mother's will before the clock struck 12. She asked the prince and the attendees for permission, and left the party after promising the prince that she would return to the party the next day. The prince said goodbye to her, and returned to his palace, waiting for the return of this charming princess the next day. The next night, the game was repeated. The wife and her two daughters left for the party, and left Cinderella in her tattered clothes to do the housework. The mother returned and did with Cinderella what she had done the previous night. But tonight's dress was more beautiful. Cinderella set off to the party after her mother said goodbye to her, and reminded her of the need to return before midnight. Cinderella arrived at the party, and the attendees held their breath at her beauty and elegance, and the prince accompanied her like her shadow throughout the party, and did not pay attention to any girl other than her, and did not dance except with her. Cinderella was so happy with all this that she forgot herself, and forgot that she had to leave, and did not notice the time that passed quickly until the clock struck midnight. At that moment, the prince was giving a speech to the audience, and he looked around and noticed that the beautiful girl was absent, as Cinderella had run quickly out of the hall before her dress had returned to its original state. Because she ran quickly, she lost one of her shoes on the stairs, and she could not pick it up for fear of missing the time. The prince ran after her, leaving the party behind him, but his princess had disappeared, and her carriage, horses, and servants had all disappeared as well, and no trace of her remained except for the glass shoe that had slipped from her foot on the stairs. So the prince picked it up and returned to his palace sadly. Days passed while the prince was in a state of sadness and depression because of the disappearance of that girl, of whom he had no trace except one of her shoes, and he did not know how to find her. The situation remained like that until an idea occurred to him, and he immediately began to implement it. The chief guard called in his palace and ordered him to take that little shoe and go around all the houses in the town, announcing that the prince would marry the girl whose foot the shoe would fit. The chief guard immediately set off to do what the prince said. The matter went on for a long time, and no girl's foot could fit into the little glass shoe, despite each girl's attempt to force her foot into the shoe. The situation remained the same until the guards arrived at Cinderella's house. Of course, the two sisters competed to try on the shoe, which was not even close to the size of their feet. Then came the surprise. After the wife and the two girls made fun of Cinderella when she wanted to try on the shoe and tried to stop her, the chief guard asked them to stay away from her, as the prince's orders were clear that the shoe should fit all the girls in the town without exception. Cinderella's foot fit into the shoe smoothly and without the slightest effort, as it fit her foot perfectly. And how could it not when it was made specifically for her foot? The two girls and their mother were shocked when they saw what happened, especially after Cinderella took the second shoe out of her pocket. It did not stop there, as her mother's ghost appeared again, and no one could see it except Cinderella. The ghost woman pointed her wand at Cinderella as she had done before, and Cinderella's tattered clothes turned back into completely charming clothes, like those she had attended the prince's parties in. A big smile appeared on the face of the head guard, who was happy because he was able to find the girl his prince was looking for, and thus he was able to end the prince's suffering. The two girls threw themselves in front of Cinderella and asked her to forgive them for what they had done to her. Cinderella, in turn, forgave them and told them that she did not hold any hatred or malice towards them in her heart. She said goodbye to them and set off with the guards to the prince's palace, who was very happy to see her. So his worries disappeared, and life returned to flow through his veins again. A few days later, Cinderella married the prince, and they held a magnificent wedding ceremony. Cinderella, with her pure heart and kind soul, invited the two girls to live in the king's palace and married them to two of the most important officials in the royal court.